So thank you very much for this possibility to describe about initiatives taken by GEDnet to develop a global PCR registry. I've been asked by someone what GEDnet is, so I need to say that GEDnet is the Global Environmental Declarations Network. You may have heard about GEN, the Global Eco-Labeling Network. It's the same type of organizations, but working with EPDs or environmental declarations instead. While GEN is following 14024, GEDnet is mostly following ISO 14025. The GEDnet was launched in 1999 when the 14025 standard was put on hold for a lot of discussions. It took 13 years to draft that standard. And at that time, it was obvious that there was a need for a forum for those who were interested in the concept to bring this concept further and discuss about the common issues. I should also say that GEDnet is, from the beginning, mainly meant to be a network for program operators. There were not very many of them at that time, and there are still not too many, but of course we welcome anyone to join the network working with these issues. One of the things that we thought was very important from the very, very beginning was harmonization. And of course we started with harmonization of EPD programs as such, and later on we focused much, much more on PCRs. So the presentation today is along these lines and expectations from its members. 14025, just quickly about some of the objectives mentioned in the standard. Apart from provide LCA-based information and encourage improvements, what I think is most important is the underlined objective to assist purchasers and users to make informed comparisons between products. And as far as I know, this is the only global recognized tool to enable comparisons between separate products to be made. So this is really something we have to look into and to make most of for the users. Bringing that further a little bit, we of course realized fairly quickly that comparability is mainly the focal point, and it's critical that we can safeguard and secure comparability. And the key vehicle, of course, as you may well know, is the PCRs. And the last bullet here is exactly what is stated in the 14025, with the ambition to avoid double work, etc. That program operators can facilitate harmonization when developing a PCR for a product category by considering already available PCR documents in the same product category and in the appropriate market area. But the question is, how should they find these PCRs? And how could they be certain it's exactly the same type of product category that they may be interested in? That's a challenge. So GEDnet has what we call a PCR library. It's mainly just links to home pages. Of course, it helps to some extent, but we need to go beyond this concept to really guide users in a better way. So within this PCR registry, we need also to add some basic knowledge on the rationale of PCRs for those who may not be familiar with the concept. Of course, the idea is to have better traceability among existing PCRs and carbon footprint PCRs. We need to special look into those PCRs where there are overlaps and where we have several PCRs for the same product category. And of course, we need to add something in connection to the database about guidance for things you need to consider to be able to compare different products. So why do we need it? I think mainly to avoid duplication of PCRs, too easy for those who would like to do it, track available PCRs on the market. It simplifies PCR development. If you find something in another PCR which was more or less relevant for your own idea, to review and updating, it will hopefully make PCRs more consistent and it reduces cost. This is easy to say. It's quite a challenge to do, I guess, because if we focus on some of the home pages, it's not as in-depth study as we just heard, but sometimes it's difficult to find the program rules and the program operators, what they call general program rules. And they sometimes are also difficult to navigate to find information about the PCRs. If you find a PCR, they can have a different structure and various levels of detail. We are not certain exactly about the detailedness and reliability of the background materials and the verifications made, for instance, and there are some translation issues as well. So, based on this, GEDnet is now taking the next step to start to develop a global PCR registry. And we have started a cooperation with PRé Consultants and Kerkhof. So PRé Consultants will really be the first organization to challenge, facing all these challenges. So I leave the floor to Anne-Marie to inform me about her primary observations, I should say.
Yeah. Okay, so we started analyzing the GEMI PCR database. We heard about it this morning. It consists of two types of PCRs. It's eco-leaf and carbon footprint for products. So the EnvironDeck database was well known, of course, by Sven-Olof Ryding. So we focused on GEMI and we tried to integrate these two databases into a global PCR registry or global PCR library, so that companies who want to make a PCR can search for what is available and is this what we really need. And later on, other PCRs can be added, or PCR program operators can add their PCRs in this global PCR registry. So if any program operators interested in this, we are really happy to hear that and to discuss what the possibilities are. Okay, so GEMI consists of 150 PCRs and EnvironDeck about 180 PCR. And how to integrate different PCRs from different program operators. We took a three-step approach. First of all, we wanted to select a product classification because otherwise it's very hard to compare if there are overlapping PCRs. The second step is to group the PCRs to this product classification. And the third step is to identify overlaps and gaps. Okay, then the first step. We looked at what product classifications are used up to now in the LCA or PCR community. EnvironDeck uses the CPC code of the UN. But the EcoInvent database, version 3, will be using product classification as well. And they will use this as from this summer. Then the European environmental footprint methods, they also describe explicitly in the guidelines which product classification should be used. The CPA code is similar to the CPC code, but slightly adapted to a European situation. Okay, and for GEMI, product classification was not that consistently used. So therefore, we decided that CPC code is a good product classification to use for a global PCR registry because it resembles many other initiatives that are ongoing. And therefore, I will skip this slide. It's about CPC classification, but I have to move on. So what we did is to group the PCRs of GEMI to the CPC codes. And happily, we have a Japanese partner who helped us with this because, Japanese is not that easy to read. So the PCRs got all CPC codes, and it's good to know that some PCRs are very narrow and do not cover full CPC code, and some PCRs have a very broad range, so they cover multiple CPC codes. And therefore, we had to try to match a little bit the existing PCRs with the codes. So it's not perfect, but it's a start. Here you see the CPC codes at the bottom and the number of PCRs developed. And you can see that for consumer products, there are the highest number of PCRs developed in EnvironDeck and GEMI, and a lower number for raw materials and services. And you can consider it as a gap, but maybe the market for services and raw materials are less asking for PCRs or EPDs or footprints. So it's not per definition a bad thing. It's just an observation. So you see it's food products, processed products, and products that are brought to the consumer. So the third step is to identify overlaps and gaps within the PCR of JMI and Environdec. Here is one example of the code products and agriculture. You have different digits within the CPC code, so PCRs are also developed at different detailed levels. Here we see some overlaps for vegetables and fruits, so they are developed in Environdec and in JMI. This is another product group, it's steel products, and here we can also identify 2 overlaps. Okay, so the conclusions are that CPC product classification seems to be a good option for a global PCR registry because it's also a classification at world level. Existing PCRs do not 100% match with CPC codes, but maybe in the future we can work towards this. We identified 20 overlaps between Environdec and JMI, so that are duplicate PCRs, and it's about 15% of the PCR from JMI and about 11% of the PCR in Environdec. So there is some overlap, so that can be improved. It should be the best when PCRs are complementing each other. And then we had some other next steps, and I think the most important one is that the PCR library will be launched at the GEDnet homepage in the near future. And it will also be a searchable PCR library, so you can search for the PCR that you need. I think that are the main conclusions. Okay, thank you.